But then I began to learn to love it. Also, I've had great experiences making movies.
When it comes to Hollywood, Nicolas Cage has always been one of the most unpredictable stars. A man who can go from Oscar-winning brilliance and Leaving Las Vegas to eccentric, meme-worthy roles that keep audiences guessing what he'll do next. But behind the wild characters, the legendary outbursts, and the cult-like following, Cage is a true lover of cinema. Over the years, he has carefully studied the greats, drawn inspiration from their craft, and even shaped his own style around some of them. Now, for the first time, Cage has opened up and revealed the 6 actors he considers his all-time favorites, and that's what we'll be diving into in this video. And guess what? He said that the number 2 person on his list is the nicest guy to ever work with. Let's count down from number 6, Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis, who I also grew up watching,
Sure.
and he was my favorite comedian.
Watching and falling in love with how comic Lewis was as a child was one of the biggest attractions that drew Cage into acting. Cage spoke about the nights he would sit in front of the television, eyes fixed, waiting for Lewis to appear. For Cage, Lewis wasn't just a performer, he was a portal into a world of laughter, madness, and magic. Cage described how his childhood fascination with Lewis grew into a lifelong admiration. Cage was not like other kids in his neighborhood. While many were out playing sports or chasing adventure in the streets, he spent hours glued to the black and white world of television, studying every move of Lewis. It was the commitment Lewis had to his craft, the way he threw himself into every gag, every stumble, every manic grin, as though the world depended on him making people laugh. To Cage, that was a form of genius. As Cage grew older, the appreciation deepened. He began to understand the mechanics behind what once made him laugh uncontrollably as a child. Lewis wasn't simply funny, he was a master at timing, rhythm, and control. The admiration went beyond screen presence. Cage was captivated by Lewis's audacity to create characters that were larger than life, yet strikingly human. Films like The Nutty Professor left an indelible mark on it. Watching Lewis transform from the bumbling Julius Kelp into the suave Buddy Love fascinated Cage and shaped the way he later approached transformation in his own roles. The idea that an actor could embody 2 extremes of personality, comic and tragic, clumsy and sophisticated, all in one performance was, for Cage, the height of acting artistry. Beyond the screen, Lewis represented something Cage longed for: belonging. Growing up, Cage often felt out of place. He wasn't always understood by his peers and sometimes struggled to fit into the typical expectations of a young boy. But when he watched Lewis, he felt connected to something universal. Jerry Lewis could make the whole world laugh, and Cage wanted to learn how to wield that kind of power. The power to break through loneliness with humor, to create unity through laughter. There was also something deeply personal in Lewis's journey that resonated with Cage. Both men came from families where the arts mattered, but both also carried the weight of pressure and expectations. Cage also pointed out that Lewis had been dismissed by critics at certain points in his career, but kept creating, kept performing, kept believing in the art of comedy. That resilience struck Cage profoundly. He never stopped believing in laughter, even when others stopped believing in him, Cage remarked. Like Lewis, Cage said he wanted to be fearless, to take risks, to push boundaries. He credited Jerry Lewis for teaching him that there's no shame in going too far, because sometimes going too far is the only way to discover something new. In many ways, Lewis gave Cage permission to be bold, to embrace his quirks and turn them into strengths. And yet, it wasn't only about performance. Cage admired Lewis for his generosity, particularly his dedication to the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the legendary telethons he hosted for decades. According to Cage, Lewis was one of his greatest inspirations, a name he never leaves out when asked about his heroes. He often says that without Lewis, he might never have found the courage to pursue acting. That boy who once stood by the TV hoping Jerry would appear has grown into one of Hollywood's most unique and daring actors. And the spirit of Jerry Lewis still flickers in every outrageous role Cage takes on. Lewis was not just a favorite actor of his, he was a guiding light to his path. Still speaking of inspiration, at number 5, we have James Dean.
Be James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause and wearing that red.
During an interview with 60 Minutes, Cage also revealed that James Dean was another actor that was his favorite and he wanted to be like him. For Cage, Dean wasn't just a Hollywood star. He was an emblem of rebellion, authenticity, and raw vulnerability, all wrapped into one. From the first time he watched Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, which was released in 1955, Cage knew he had found the kind of actor he longed to become. Cage described Dean's influence as a jolt of electricity to his system. As a teenager, still unsure of his identity, he would sit in dark rooms replaying Dean's movies over and over. memorizing his gestures, his subtle smirks, the explosive bursts of anger that seemed to come out of nowhere. Dean was not polished like many of the stars of his era. He was messy, human, and unpredictable. That messiness spoke directly to Cage, who never wanted to be a perfect Hollywood actor, but one who dared to be vulnerable and strange. Cage shared how fascinated he was about Dean's silence in East of Eden. Dean could sit at a dinner table, say nothing, and yet radiate pain, longing, and defiance. Cage has said he studied that scene repeatedly, trying to figure out how Dean could communicate so much without speaking a word. He was speaking with his eyes, with his breath, with the pauses. Cage explained in an interview, "That's when I realized acting wasn't just dialogue, it was energy." This revelation shaped Cage's own performances, where silence and stillness often carry as much weight as his most eccentric explosions. Cage said that he saw himself in Dean's characters. In Rebel Without a Cause, Dean's Jim Stark is a young man who feels alienated, desperate for connection, but trapped in a world that misunderstands him. Cage related deeply to that alienation. As a teenager, he often felt like an outsider, awkward, restless, searching for something greater. Watching Dean wasn't just entertainment, it was therapy. It told him that he wasn't alone in his feelings of isolation, that others had lived through the same turmoil. There was also tragedy in Dean's story that haunted Cage. Dean died in 1955 at just 24 years old, after only 3 major films. Yet he left behind a legacy that still endures. To Cage, that was both devastating and inspiring. Dean had shown that even a brief career could change cinema forever. Cage carried that lesson into his own work, reminding himself that every role mattered. Every performance had the potential to define him. "Dean made me realize it's not about how long you last," Cage once said. "It's about how deeply you can affect people while you're here." When Cage began acting professionally, he channeled Dean's influence deliberately. He studied method acting at UCLA, following in the footsteps of Dean, who had trained under Lee Strasberg. Cage sought the same intensity, the same connection to raw emotion, often pushing himself to extremes to bring authenticity to his roles. Whether it was eating a live cockroach in Vampire's Kiss or breaking into unhinged laughter in Face Divided by Off, Cage always credited Dean for inspiring him to take risks, to go where others were afraid to go. The funny thing is that Cage admitted that his desire to be like James Dean nearly consumed him. As a young actor, he copied Dean's movements, his tone, his aura, until one day he realized he had to break free and find his own voice. Regardless, Dean remains one of his favorites. Number 4. Christopher Lee.
Personal favorite was Christopher Lee in the Hammer horror films. I thought
When Cage was faced with the challenge of acting as Dracula, Christopher Lee became the very person he turned to. Lee, who had played the iconic vampire in the Hammer horror films of the 1950s through the 1970s, was not only a master of gothic performance but also a legend in Cage's eyes. Cage admitted that before taking the role in Renfield, he rewatched many of Lee's films to understand how to embody a character that was larger than life, yet deeply rooted in human fear and allure. Nicolas Cage grew up watching Lee in the iconic Hammer horror films, where Lee reinvented Dracula for a new generation. Towering, mysterious, and commanding, Lee's version of Dracula was terrifying without being grotesque. He didn't just play a vampire, he made Dracula human, seductive, almost sympathetic at times. Cage admitted that as a young boy sitting in front of the TV, he would freeze every time Lee appeared on screen. That magnetic pull was something Cage never forgot. When Cage himself was approached decades later to play Dracula in the 2023 horror comedy Renfield, he confessed that his first thought was Christopher Lee, not Bela Lugosi, not any of the other names who had tackled the role, but Lee. If I was going to wear that cape, if I was going to step into that world, I had to find my own way, but I couldn't ignore what Lee had already done, Cage remarked. Lee's influence went beyond Dracula. Cage admired the actor's versatility, how he went from horror to fantasy epics like The Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. To Cage, that was proof of Lee's genius, the ability to move across genres while keeping his unique gravitas intact. There was also something deeply personal in Cage's love for Lee. He saw him as the perfect balance of classical acting and supernatural imagination. Cage has always been fascinated by the strange, the gothic, the surreal. Watching Lee gave him permission, in a way, to lean into those instincts. He often said that actors like Lee taught him that it was okay to go big, to embrace theatricality without apology. Christopher Lee was never afraid of grandeur, Cage explained. When Cage finally played Dracula, he admitted that he carried Lee's image with him. The walk, the stare, Even the subtle elegance in how Lee would hold a glass of wine or sweep across a room, Cage studied it all. Of course, he also wanted to make the character his own, adding flashes of dark humor and eccentricity, but deep down, he was paying homage to the man who had inspired him since childhood. What made Lee even more special in Cage's eyes was his life outside the screen. Lee had been in the Royal Air Force during World War II, served as an intelligence officer, and had lived a life full of mystery and intrigue long before he ever became a star. Cage loved that about him. Over and over again, Cage has named Christopher Lee as one of his favorite actors. Number 3. Kristoffer Kristofferson.
Did Chris Christopherson in A Star Is Born. From him, I got that feeling of he was always smiling.
According to Cage, back in 1995 when he was getting ready to shoot his short film Leaving Las Vegas, Kristoffer indirectly became his teacher as he learned from him exactly how to interpret his character in the film. Cage was preparing to play Ben Sanderson, a man consumed by alcoholism and despair, and he admitted that he was lost in how to bring that kind of pain to the screen without making it hollow. Then, one evening, while revisiting some of Kristofferson's films and songs, he found the key. Kristofferson by then was already a legend. The songwriter who gave the world Me and Bobby McGee, the actor who brought grit and vulnerability into films like A Star Is Born and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. What struck Cage most was not just Kristofferson's talent, but his honesty. His characters often felt like men who had lived 100 lives, carried 100 regrets, and yet still stood tall. Cage realized that was exactly what he needed for Ben Sanderson. Not just drunkenness, but dignity within destruction. Cage spoke about how Kristofferson's approach guided him during that shooting. Even more, Kristofferson's own journey inspired him. A Rhodes Scholar, a Golden Gloves boxer, a helicopter pilot who once landed on Johnny Cash's lawn just to hand him a demo tape. Kristofferson had lived boldly, unafraid of failure. Cage admired that courage. He often compared it to his own need to take risks in cinema, whether in blockbusters or eccentric indie projects. In Kristofferson, Cage found an artist who proved that risk was the lifeblood of authenticity. Cage also loved Kristofferson's presence as a man. In interviews, he admired how Kristofferson never seemed consumed by ego. Despite his fame, he remained grounded, often choosing art and conviction over commercial gain. That humility left a mark on Cage, who admitted that navigating Hollywood's temptations often pushed him to excess. Kristofferson became a reminder that one could be both legendary and human. Their paths eventually crossed in Hollywood circles, and Cage has shared that meeting him was almost surreal. He described Kristofferson as soft-spoken, kind, and without pretense. Number 2. Pedro Pascal.
Just a great actor.
He is great.
And you couldn't ask for a nicer man to work with.
When Nicolas Cage talks about the actors he has loved working with, Pedro Pascal's name comes up with a kind of warmth that is rare in Hollywood. Cage has admitted that while he has shared the screen with countless actors throughout his decades-long career, there was something refreshingly genuine about Pascal. He described him as one of the nicest people he has ever worked with, an actor who not only takes his craft seriously, but also makes the set a space filled with laughter, collaboration, and respect. Their most notable collaboration came in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent of 2002. A film that cleverly blended fiction with Cage's real persona. Cage played an exaggerated version of himself, while Pascal played Javi, a wealthy superfan who also happened to be entangled in a wild criminal plot. What could have been a chaotic shoot turned into one of the most enjoyable experiences for Cage, largely because of Pascal's energy. Cage has often said that Pascal brought a balance of professionalism and playfulness to the set. In between takes, Pascal had a way of easing the tension, cracking jokes and reminding everyone that filmmaking, at its heart, should be fun. Yet when the cameras rolled, Pascal switched instantly into character, delivering his lines with a precision and sincerity that impressed even a veteran like Cage. He's one of those actors who makes you better just by being there, Cage noted in an interview. What Cage loved most, though, was Pascal's generosity. Hollywood can often be plagued with egos and competition, but Pascal never carried himself that way. He celebrated Cage's improvisations, embraced his eccentricities, and even encouraged him to go further. Cage admitted that some of his best moments in the film came because Pascal gave him the freedom to explore without judgment. That kind of trust is rare, and Cage valued it deeply. Beyond the work, Cage and Pascal developed a genuine friendship. They bonded over shared humor, long conversations, and a mutual respect for each other's unique paths in Hollywood. Cage recalled how Pascal would often check in on on him, making sure he was comfortable and enjoying the process. It's not something you expect in this business, but Pedro has that rare quality of actually caring, Cage said. The film itself benefited greatly from their chemistry. Audiences and critics alike noted that the dynamic between Cage and Pascal was the highlight of the unbearable weight of massive talent. Their friendship on screen felt authentic because it was authentic. Cage credited Pascal with helping him create those moments of sincerity, even amidst the comedy and action. For Cage, working with Pascal was evidence that kindness and talent can coexist beautifully in Hollywood. That, for Cage, was reason enough to name him as one of his favorite actors. Coming to number 1, we have Ty Sheridan.
His silences are sometimes even more profound than his...
When Nicolas Cage speaks about the actors who have left a lasting impression on him, Ty Sheridan stands tall among them. Cage has said repeatedly that one of the things that struck him most about Sheridan was how quickly he hit the ground running in his career. Despite being so young, Sheridan carried himself with the discipline and skill of someone far older, and that combination made him one of the most exciting young actors Cage has ever worked with. Their collaboration came in Joe, a gritty 2013 Southern drama where Cage played a troubled ex-con trying to lead a quiet life, while Sheridan played Gary, a teenager caught between poverty, an abusive father, and the desperate need to carve out a better future. For Cage, the role of Joe was one of his most emotionally demanding performances, but he has often said that Sheridan's presence was what helped him elevate the story, because Sheridan didn't play the young man like a child. He played him like someone with grit, resilience, and raw authenticity. Cage admitted that, on set, it was easy to forget Sheridan was just a teenager at the time. His ability to embody Gary's pain and determination shocked everyone involved in the film. While many young actors struggled to hold their own against veterans, Sheridan seemed to thrive in the challenge. Cage noted, "He came in with this intensity and focus that I rarely see, even in actors who have been in the business for decades." What impressed Cage further was Sheridan's consistency. Cage followed Sheridan's career closely, and what he noticed was a pattern. The young actor didn't miss. From Mud, where he worked alongside Matthew McConaughey, to Ready Player One under the direction of Steven Spielberg, Sheridan showed time and again that he wasn't just a passing name, he was a serious talent. Cage admired how Sheridan transitioned smoothly across genres, proving his versatility so early in his life, and all these made him one of his favorites. When Cage names his favorite actors, it isn't just about fame or legacy, it's about who brought something unforgettable into his life and career. Let's know your thoughts in the comments section. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, like and share.